Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada, where we get a dose every night of Srila Prabhupada's association. We have Devon with us tonight, a new first attender. We welcome her with open arms and encourage all of you to do the same. Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. Okay, before we read the Srimad-Bhagavatam, which is the foundation of our culture and our teachings, we read the prayer that one of our great teachers in our line composed, glorifying and explaining what this literature is that we're reading tonight. It's called the Srimad-Bhagavata Mahima Stotram, which means the glories of the Srimad-Bhagavatam. And it's only 5 verses. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabho, Kalidwandodita Ditya, Shri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madhika Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Mandistadaka Madbhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu Saduta Dayin Atini Chochata Kada Anamunchagada Chinmam Premna Ritkantayos Buddha. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So we've reached the 4th canto, 22nd chapter. King Prthu is meeting the 4 Kumaras for the benefit of Devan and others who may be here for the first time listening. This Srimad-Bhagavatam is actually a recorded history of the universe. That's a long time. We're about halfway through the Hare Krishna, Hare Bol, Kamarachan Prabhu. And obviously this length of time, only the most important events in the history of the universe are recorded in this Sanskrit literature, Sanskrit scripture. And these most important events have to do with the appearance and the activities of incarnations of God, incarnations of Krishna. The Sanskrit word Krishna means anointed one or all attractive one. And if you trace the history of language from Sanskrit Krishna, it goes to the Greek Christo, to the Aramaic Christa, and to English Christ. So this is the same word for the same person, the Supreme Being. There's one Supreme Being, but that Supreme Being is not like us. We're individual beings. We're infinitesimal, obviously. If we compare ourselves to the universe, it's pretty easy to see that we're infinitesimal, very small in relationship to the universe. But Krishna, he's a person, a conscious, sentient being like us, but he's unlimited and the source of all other sentient beings. And it's not that if we put us all together, then we make him. We're eternally individual conscious beings, and he's eternally the supreme conscious being. Just like the sun is the source of light and heat in the universe, and the sun rays, and the sun is in one place, but the sun's rays go everywhere. And the sun's rays are made up of little photons, individual molecules or combination of molecules of heat and light. So we're like that. And therefore we're always connected to Krishna, just like the sun is always connected to the sun's rays. But sometimes the sun itself creates cloud by evaporating water, and therefore covers the vision of us. It doesn't cover the sun, because the sun is millions of times bigger than the earth. It can't cover the sun, but it can cover our vision. So that's what's happening here to us. We've come to this material world wanting to be like Krishna in ways that we're not, in an unnatural way. To be masters when we're actually servants. And we're struggling to try to do that, and we're competing with one another to try to be better and ultimately be supreme, to be the masters. But actually Krishna is the only master, and everyone else are servants. But that doesn't mean that we become kind of like indentured servants. No, we're all capable of having a loving relationship with Krishna. And when we do have that loving relationship in service, then we enjoy even more than Krishna does. That's the nature of spiritual existence. And the spiritual world is like that. And this Bhagavatam that we're reading is the history of the universe and the comings and goings of incarnations of Krishna, different forms of Krishna that expand from him and come to the material world to help us to correct time-worn material civilizations. And when we're forgetful, when irreligion becomes too prominent, then Krishna comes in one form or another, even though he's the same person, to help us remember. So that's what the Bhagavatam is. And we're in this section, the appearance and activities of Prthu Maharaj. He's an empowered representative of Krishna, and he became the king of this earth and did some fairly intense organizing. He started agriculture, and he started villages and organized cities and this kind of thing. So he has just met 4 of the original saintly persons in the universe, the 4 Kumara brothers, Sanat Kumara in particular. And Sanat Kumara is answering questions that Prthu Maharaj asked him. And that's where we are. I know that's a lot to take in, just to give you some orientation. Hare Krishna. So, text 18. Sanat Kumara said, "My dear King Prthu, I am very nicely questioned by you. Such questions are beneficial for all living entities, especially because they are raised by you, who are always thinking of the good of others. Although you know everything, you ask such questions because that is the behavior of saintly persons. Such intelligence is befitting your position. Purport. Maharaj Prthu was well conversant in transcendental science, yet he presented himself before the Kumaras as one ignorant of it. The idea is that even if a person is very exalted and knows everything, before his superior he should present questions. For instance, although Arjuna knew all the transcendental science, he questioned Krishna as if he did not know. Similarly, Prthu Maharaj knew everything, but he presented himself before the Kumaras as if he did not know anything. The idea is that questions by exalted persons put before the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotees are meant for the benefit of the general people. Therefore, sometimes great personalities put themselves in that position and inquire from a higher authority because they are always thinking of the benefit of others. Text 19. When there is a congregation of devotees, their discussions, questions, and answers become conclusive to both the speaker and the audience. Thus, such a meeting is beneficial for everyone's real happiness. Purport. Hearing discussions among the devotees is the only means to receive the powerful message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For instance, Bhagavad Gita has been well known all over the world for a very long time, especially in the Western world. But because the subject matter was not discussed by devotees, there was no effect. Not a single person in the West became Krishna conscious before the Krishna consciousness movement was founded. But when the same Bhagavad Gita was presented as it is through the disciplic succession, the effect of spiritual realization was immediately manifested. Sanat Kumara, one of the Kumaras, informed Prthu Maharaj that his meeting with the Kumaras benefited not only Maharaj Prthu, but the Kumaras as well. When Narada Muni questioned Lord Brahma about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Brahma thanked Narada Muni for giving him a chance to speak about the Supreme Lord. Therefore, questions put to a saintly person, to another saintly person, Therefore, questions put by a saintly person to another saintly person about the Supreme Personality of Godhead or about the ultimate goal of life surcharge everything spiritually. Whoever takes advantage of such discussions is benefited both in this life and in the next. The word ubayesham can be described in many ways. Generally, there are two classes of men, the materialist and the transcendentalist. By hearing discussions between devotees, both the materialist and transcendentalist are benefited. The materialist is benefited by association with devotees because his life then becomes regulated, so that his chance of becoming a devotee or making the present life successful for understanding the real position of the living entity is increased. When one takes advantage of this opportunity, he is assured of a human form of life in the next birth, or he may be liberated completely and go back home, back to Godhead. The conclusion is that if one participates in a discussion of devotees, he is both materially and spiritually benefited. The speaker and the audience are both benefited, and the karmis and jnanis are benefited. The discussion of spiritual matters amongst devotees is beneficial for everyone, without exception. Consequently, the Kumaras admitted that not only was the king benefited by such a meeting, but the Kumaras were as well. Text 20. Sanat Kumara continued, "My dear king, you already have an inclination to glorify the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Such attachment is very difficult to achieve. But when one has attained such unflinching faith in the Lord, it automatically cleanses lusty desires from the core of the heart." Purport. This is a very famous verse in the beginning of the purport. I'm going to chant the Sanskrit. Satam prasangan mamavirya sambido bhavanti rit karna rasayana kataha yad taj joshanat ashapavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhakti anu kramishyati. This is the Bhagavatam 3:25. By association with devotees, dirty things within the heart of a materialistic man are gradually washed away by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As silver becomes shiny by being polished, the heart of a materialistic person is cleansed of lusty desires by the good association of devotees. Actually, the living being has no connection with this material enjoyment, nor with lusty desires. He is simply imagining or dreaming while asleep. But by the association of pure devotees, he is awakened, and immediately the spirit soul is situated in his own glory by understanding his constitutional position as the eternal servant of the Lord. Prthu Maharaj was already a self-realized soul. Therefore, he had a natural inclination to glorify the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the Kumaras assured him that there was no chance of his falling victim to the illusory energy of the Supreme Lord. In other words, the process of hearing and chanting about the glories of the Lord is the only means to clarify the heart of material contamination. By the process of karma, jnana, and yoga, no one will succeed in driving away contamination from the heart. But once a person takes to the shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord by devotional service, automatically all dirty things in the heart are removed without difficulty. Text 21. It has been conclusively decided in the scriptures, after due consideration, that the ultimate goal for the welfare of human society is detachment from the bodily concept of life and increased and steadfast attachment for the Supreme Lord, who is transcendental beyond the modes of material nature. Purport. Everyone in human society is engaged for the ultimate benefit of life, but persons who are in the bodily conception cannot achieve the ultimate goal, nor can they understand what it is. The ultimate goal of life is described in Bhagavad Gita 2:59, Param Drishtva Nivartate. When one finds out the supreme goal of life, he naturally becomes detached from the bodily concept. Here in this verse, the indication is that one has to steadfastly increase attachment for the transcendence, Brahmani. As confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra 1.1.1, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Without inquiry about the Supreme or the transcendence, one cannot give up attachment for this material world. By the evolutionary process in 8,400,000 species of life, one cannot understand the ultimate goal of life, because in all those species of life, the bodily conception is very prominent. Atato Brahma Jigyasa means that in order to get out of the bodily conception, one has to increase attachment, or one has to increase it. I'll say that again. Atato Brahma Jigyasa means that in order to get out of the bodily conception, one has to increase attachment to or inquiry about Brahman. Then he can be situated in the transcendental devotional service, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu. To increase attachment for Brahman means to engage in devotional service. Those who are attached to the impersonal form of Brahman cannot remain attached for very long. Impersonalists, after rejecting the world as mithya or false, jagan mithya, come down again to this jagan mithya, although they take sannyas to increase their attachment for Brahman. Similarly, many yogis who are attached to the localized aspect of Brahman or as Paramatma, great sages like Vishwamrita, also fall down as victims of women. Therefore, increased attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead is advised in all Shastras. That is the only way of detachment from material existence, and is explained in Bhagavad Gita 259 as param drishtva nivartate. One can cease material activities when he actually has a taste for devotional service. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also recommended love of Godhead as the ultimate goal of life. Prema, pumarto, mahan. Without increasing love of Godhead, one cannot achieve the perfectional stage of the transcendental position. Text 22. Attachment for the Supreme can be increased by practicing devotional service, inquiring about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, applying Bhakti Yoga in life, worshipping the Yogeshwara, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and by hearing and chanting about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These actions are pious in themselves. Purport. The word Yogeshwara is applicable to both the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna and his devotees also. In Bhagavad Gita, this word occurs in two places. In the 18th chapter, 1878, Krishna is described as the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, who is the master of all mystic power, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna. Yogeshwara is also described in the end of the 6th chapter, 647, Same Yuktatamo Mataha. This Yuktatama indicates the topmost of all yogis, the devotees, who can also be called Yogeshwara. In this verse, Yogeshwara Upasana means to render service to a pure devotee. Thus, Narottam Das Thakur says, Chadiya Vaishnava Seva Nishtara Vayechi Keba. Without serving a pure devotee, one cannot advance in spiritual life. Prahlad Maharaj has also said, Naisham Matis Tabat Urup Ramangrim Pishat Janartha Pagamo Yadartaha Mahi Yasam Padarajo Bishekam Nishkinchananam Nanivinitina Yavat. That's the Bhagavatam 7.532. One should take shelter of a pure devotee who has nothing to do with this material world, but is simply engaged in devotional service. By serving him only, one can transcend the qualitative material condition. In this verse it is recommended, Yogeshwara Upasanaya, that one serve the lotus feet of the topmost yogi or the devotee. To serve the topmost devotee means to hear from him about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. To hear the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead from the mouth of a pure devotee is to acquire a pious life. In Bhagavad Gita 7.28, it is also said that without being pious, one cannot engage in devotional service. Yesham twantagatam papam jananam punyakarmanam tedvanva mohanir mukta bhajante mam dridavrataha. To become fixed in devotional service, one has to become completely cleansed from the contamination of the material modes of nature. For work in devotional service, The first item is Adau Gurashrayam. One should accept a bona fide spiritual master, and from the bona fide spiritual master, inquire about one's transcendental occupational duties, Saddharma Prichcha, and follow in the footsteps of great saintly persons, devotees, Sadhu Marga Anugramanam. These are the instructions given in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu by Rupa Goswami. The conclusion is that to increase attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one has to accept a bona fide spiritual master and learn from him the methods of devotional service and hear from him about the transcendental message and glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In this way, one has to increase his conviction about devotional service. Then it will be very easy to increase attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 23. One has to make progress in spiritual life, not by associating with persons who are simply interested in sense gratification and making money. Not only such persons, but one who associates with such persons should be avoided. One should mold his life in such a way that he cannot live in peace without drinking the nectar of the glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. One can thus be elevated by being disgusted with a taste for sense enjoyment. Purport. In the material world, everyone is interested in money and sense gratification. The only objective is to earn as much money as possible and utilize it for satisfaction of the senses. Srila Shukadeva Goswami has thus described the activities of the materialistic persons. Nidraya Ridya Riyate Naktam Vyavayina Chabhabayaha Diva Chartishtaya Rajan Katumba Paranenava. 213 Bhagavatam. This is a typical example of materialistic persons. At night they waste their time by sleeping more than 6 hours or by wasting time in sex indulgence. This is their occupation at night. And in the morning they go to their office or business place just to earn money. As soon as there is some money, they become busy in purchasing things for their children and others. Such persons are never interested in understanding the values of life. What is God? What is the individual soul? What is the relationship with God? Etc. Things are degraded to such an extent that those who are supposed to be religious are also, at the present moment, interested only in sense gratification. The number of materialistic persons in this age of Kali has increased more than in any other age. Therefore, persons who are interested in going back home, back to Godhead, should not only engage in the service of realized souls, but should give up the company of materialistic persons whose only aim is to earn money and employ it in sense gratification. They should also not accept the objectives of materialistic persons, namely money and sense gratification. Therefore it is stated, Bhakti Parishananubhavo Viraktir Anyatra Cha. It's Bhagavatam 11:242. To advance in devotional service, one should be uninterested in the materialistic way of life. That which is the subject matter of satisfaction for the devotees is of no interest to the non-devotees. Simple negation or giving up the company of materialistic persons will not do. We must have engagements. Sometimes it is found that a person interested in spiritual advancement gives up the company of material society and goes to a secluded place, as recommended for the yogis especially. But that will also not help a person in spiritual advancement. For in many instances, such yogis fall down. As far as jnanis are concerned, generally they fall down without taking shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. The impersonalists or the voidists can simply avoid the positive material association. They cannot remain fixed in transcendence without being engaged in devotional service. The beginning of devotional service is to hear about the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is recommended in this verse. Vina harer guna piyushapanat. One must drink the nectar of the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this means that one must be always engaged in hearing and chanting the glories of the Lord. It is the prime method for advancing in spiritual life. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also recommends this in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. If one wants to make advancement in spiritual life, by great fortune he may meet a bona fide spiritual master and from him learn about Krishna. By serving both the spiritual master and Krishna, he gets the seed of devotional service, Bhakti Lata Bij. And if he sows the seed within his heart and waters it by hearing and chanting, it grows into a luxuriant Bhakti Lata, or Bhakti creeper. The creeper is so strong that it penetrates the covering of the universe and reaches the spiritual world and continues to grow on until it reaches and takes shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. Just as an ordinary creeper also grows on until it takes a solid shelter on a roof. Then it very steadily grows and produces the required fruit. The real cause of the growing of such fruit, which is here called the nectar of hearing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is to water the creeper of devotional service by hearing and chanting. The purport is that one cannot live outside the society of devotees. One must live in the association of devotees, where there is constant chanting and hearing of the glories of the Lord. The Krishna consciousness movement is started for this purpose, so that hundreds of ISKCON centers may give people a chance to hear and chant, to accept the spiritual master, and to disassociate themselves from persons who are materially interested. For in this way, one can make solid advancement in going back home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. What a purport. Phew. Okay, text 24. A candidate for spiritual advancement must be non-violent, must follow in the footsteps of great acharyas, must always remember the nectar of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, must follow the regulator principles without material desire, and while following the regulator principles, should not blaspheme others. A devotee should lead a very simple life and not be disturbed by the duality of opposing elements. He should learn to tolerate them. This is very difficult in this age. We're living in this age called Kali Yuga, and the scriptures describe that in this age, the atmosphere is surcharged with opposition. Everybody, they've got no. It's there, it's in the ether, it's in our minds, it's in our senses. Somebody comes and says, what do you think about this? No. What do you think about that? No. It's the way it is, it's so hard. Even those of us who are living together and trying to do this, it's hard. Every one of us souls have, none of us are the same. Everyone's different. We have different thoughts and different inclinations, different likes, different dislikes. We're always competing with one another, clashing. So what Prabhupada is saying here, and what Sanatana Goswami is saying here, in essence, is that if you want to cross over that ocean of opposition, then you have to be in association with, at least some of the time, with devotees where we're all on the same page. Because when we stay on the same page, the atmosphere changes. And no matter what our background, what our age, what our gender, whatever, or whatever, we come together. And then we can taste what it would mean like to be spiritual, to be happy. Not happiness that just comes in a flash because you got the right, you downloaded the right iTunes song that just happens to, turn your, ring your chimes or whatever it does, turn you on, But a kind of happiness that stays and grows and doesn't go away. That's what we're tasting here. No joke. I'm talking about 46 years of experience. It doesn't go away, and it just keeps growing, and it keeps getting sweeter and better the more we do this together. Anyway, I'll let you talk to the others about that. Hare Krishna. We should learn to tolerate the opposing elements. Purport. The devotees are actually saintly persons, or sadhus. The first qualification of a sadhu, or devotee, is ahimsa, or non-violence. Persons interested in the path of devotional service, or in going back home, back to Godhead, must first practice ahimsa, or non-violence. A sadhu is described as titikshava, karunika. A devotee should be tolerant. It should be very much compassionate toward others. For example, if he suffers personal injury, he should tolerate it. But if someone else suffers injury, a devotee need not tolerate it. The whole world is full of violence, and the devotee's first business is to stop this violence, including the unnecessary slaughter of animals. A devotee is the friend not only of human society, but of all living entities, for he sees all living entities as sons of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He does not claim himself to be the only Son of God and allow all others to be killed, thinking that they have no soul. This kind of philosophy is never advocated by a pure devotee of the Lord. Suridak sarvadehinam. A true devotee is a friend of all living entities. Krishna claims in Bhagavad Gita to be the father of all species of living entities. Consequently, the devotee of Krishna is always a friend of all. This is called ahimsa. Such non-violence can be practiced only when we follow in the footsteps of great acharyas. Therefore, according to our Vaishnava philosophy, we have to follow the great acharyas of the 4 sampradayas, or disciplic successions. Trying to advance in spiritual life outside the disciplic succession is simply ludicrous. It is said, therefore, acharyavan purusho veda. One who follows the disciplic succession of acharyas knows things as they are. Chandogya Upanishad 6.14.2. Tad Vigyanartam Sugurum Ebabhigachet. Mundaka Upanishad 1.2.12. In order to understand the transcendental science, one must approach the bona fide spiritual master. The word smritya is very important in spiritual life. Smritya means remembering Krishna always. Life should be molded in such a way that one cannot remain alone without thinking of Krishna. We should live in Krishna consciousness. We should live in Krishna, so that while eating, sleeping, walking, and working, we remain only in Krishna. Our Krishna consciousness society recommends that we arrange our living so that we can remember Krishna. In our ISKCON society, the devotees, while engaged in making spiritual sky incense, are also hearing about the glories of Krishna or his devotees. The Shastra recommends smartavya satatam Vishnu. Lord Vishnu should be remembered always, constantly. Vismartavyo najatuchit. Vishnu should never be forgotten. That is the spiritual way of life. Smritya, this remembrance of the Lord, can be continued if we hear about him constantly. It is therefore recommended in this verse, Mukunda Charita Argya Siduna. Sidhu means nectar. To hear about Krishna from Srimad-Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita or similar authentic literature is to live in Krishna consciousness. Such concentration in Krishna consciousness can be achieved by persons who are strictly following the rules and regulated principles. We have recommended in our Krishna consciousness movement that a devotee chant 16 rounds on beads daily and follow the regulated principles. That will help the devotee be fixed in his spiritual advancement in life. It is also stated in this verse that one can advance by controlling the senses, yamai. By controlling the senses, one can become a swami or goswami. One who is therefore enjoying the super title swami or goswami must be very strict in controlling his senses. Indeed, he must be a master of his senses. This is possible when one does not desire any material sense gratification. If by chance the senses want to work independently, he must control them. If we simply practice avoiding material sense gratification, controlling the senses is automatically achieved. Another important point mentioned in this connection is anindaya. We should not criticize others' methods of religion. This is really important. I mean, she walked in the door, and these purports, I mean, they were like written for you, written for a new person, and we're fourth canto, we're far into this literature, and yet all of a sudden this, isn't it? Doesn't it seem like that? Wow, it's amazing. Very important point. Another important point mentioned in this connection is anindaya. We should not criticize others' methods of religion. There are different types of religious systems operating under different qualities of material nature. Those operating in the mode of ignorance and passion cannot be as perfect as the system in the mode of goodness, as that system in the mode of goodness. In Bhagavad Gita, everything has been divided into 3 qualitative divisions. Therefore, religious systems are similarly characterized. When people are mostly under the modes of passion and ignorance, their system of religion will be of the same quality. A devotee, instead of criticizing such systems, will encourage the followers to stick to their principles, so that gradually they can come to the platform of religion in goodness. Simply by criticizing them, a devotee's mind will be agitated. Thus, a devotee should tolerate and learn to stop agitation. Another feature of the devotee is nirihaya, simple living. Niriha means gentle, meek, or simple. A devotee should not live very gorgeously and imitate a materialistic person. Plain living and high thinking are recommended for a devotee. He should accept only so much as he needs to keep the material body fit for the execution of devotional service. He should not eat or sleep more than is required. Simply eating for living and not living for eating, and sleeping only 6 to 7 hours a day, are principles to be followed by devotees. As long as the body is there, it is subjected to the influence of climatic changes, disease, and other natural disturbances. The threefold miseries of material existence. We cannot avoid them. Sometimes we receive letters from neophyte devotees questioning why they have fallen consciousness. They should learn from this verse that they have to become tolerant. Dandva titikshaya. This is the world of duality. One should not think that because he has fallen sick, he has fallen from Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness can continue without impediment from any material opposition. Lord Krishna therefore advises in Bhagavad Gita 2:14, Tang titikshasa bharata. My dear Arjuna, Please try to tolerate all these disturbances. Be fixed in your Krishna conscious activities. Text 25. The devotee should gradually increase the culture of devotional service by constant hearing of the transcendental qualities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These pastimes are like ornamental decorations on the ears of devotees. By rendering devotional service and transcending the material qualities, one can easily be fixed in transcendence in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. This verse is especially mentioned to substantiate the devotional process of hearing the subject matter. A devotee does not like to hear anything other than subjects dealing with spiritual activities or the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We can increase our propensity for devotional service by hearing Bhagavad Gita and Srimad-Bhagavatam from realized souls. The more we hear from realized souls, the more we make advancement in our devotional life. The more we advance in devotional life, the more we become detached from the material world. The more we become detached from the material world, as advised by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the more we increase in attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, a devotee who actually wants to make progress in devotional service and go back home, back to Godhead, must lose interest in sense enjoyment and associating with persons who are after money and sense gratification. This is the advice of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Nishkinchanasya bhagavad bhajanon mukhasya padam padam jigamishor babasagarasya sandarshanam vishayinam atayoshitam cha ha hanta hanta vishabhak shanatopyasadu. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita, Manti 11.8. The word Brahmani, used in this verse, is commented upon by the impersonalists or professional reciters of Bhagavatam, who are mainly advocates of the caste system of demoniac birthright. They say that Brahmani means the impersonal Brahman, but they cannot conclude this with reference to the context of the words bhaktya and guna bidhanena. According to the impersonalists, there are no transcendental qualities in the impersonal Brahman. Therefore, we should understand that Brahmani means in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as admitted by Arjuna in Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, wherever the word Brahma is used, it must refer to Krishna, not to the impersonal Brahman, effulgence. Brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabhyate. Bhagavatam 1-11. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan can all be taken in total as Brahman. But when there is reference to the word bhakti, or remembrance of the transcendental qualities, this indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead, not the impersonal Brahman. So just to make this a little more clear to you, because you're hearing all this stuff for the first time, it's a lot to take in, isn't it? You know, the sun, as I mentioned it before as an example, has different parts. You know, there's the sun itself, the globe, the inside, the heart of the sun. Then there's the surface of the globe. And then there's the sunshine that comes from it. These are different parts of the sun. So therefore, if we're sitting here in the room and the sun rays come in, sometimes we'll say, oh, the sun is here, or the sun is up, or something like that. Because we identify the sunshine with the sun. You never see the sun without the sunshine. You never see sunshine without the sun. So therefore, it's one unit, but at the same time, we see the different parts, and we can talk about them as different parts, or different from one another. If the sun was actually in the room, hey, we wouldn't be here. So like that, Krishna has an effulgence that emanates from him. And that effulgence is the basis of existence, both in the spiritual and in the material worlds. Everything's resting on it. It's hard to explain. Just like Krishna says, Matak Padatanam Nanyat Kinchidasti Dhananjaya Mai Sarv Idam Proktam Sutre Mani Gana Iva. So this means that Krishna is actually, there's no one or nothing superior to Krishna. He's the origin of everything. He's God. And he says that I am the basis of, just like everything's resting on me, like pearls are strung on a thread. So when you see pearls nicely strung on a thread, if that nicely strung means there's no thread in between. The pearls are like together, and all you see is the pearls, and it looks very beautiful. But what's holding it together is a thread. And then if you break it, the pearls all go, and they're no longer, I mean, maybe they're beautiful, each one of them, but it's not as nice as a nicely strung pearl necklace or whatever. So like that, there's an energy that's transforming into the material energy, and everything's resting on that energy. It's just like a cloud in the sky is resting in the sky. But it's not that if you take the cloud away, there's a void space there. There's no sky. The sky stays there. The cloud is in the sky, and it moves through the sky. So they look separate, but they're not separate. They're both there all the time. So like that, there's a Brahman effulgence coming from Krishna, coming from God. And we are living inside a cloud in that effulgence. And that cloud is made up of very complicated stuff, which is covering us and making us think that we are matter. And therefore that matter is everything that matters. That's good, I gotta remember that one. Matter is everything that matters. That's our position in this material world. But if you take the soul out of the body, if you take the consciousness out of the body, what is the soul worth? I mean, what is the body worth? Not very much. I mean, as a matter of fact, you've got to put it away somewhere and compost it. Or now they have a new thing. Now you can compost the human body to make the earth more fertile. Yeah? Yeah, there are some people recommending it. But actually, I mean, if you think about it, either we get put in the ground and we become like earth, or the stool of a worm or some insects or something, or they burn the body. That's Vedic culture burns the body typically, and then it becomes ashes. Or if you throw it out, in some cultures they just throw it out and let the vultures eat it, or the dogs or the jackals or whatever in the wild, and then it becomes a stool of an animal. No offense intended, but that's what we got. It's inert, it's made of inert matter. What makes it nice, what makes it beautiful, what makes it attractive is the soul, is the consciousness. And even the most erudite scholar and scientist, they cannot explain by material, mechanistic, reductionistic science consciousness. They can't explain it because they can't touch it, see it, smell it, break it apart, put it in acid and see what happens to it. Because it's non-material. It's different energy than the material energy. And that's what spiritual life is all about. First of all, to understand it, as we just read. Without understanding that we're actually not the body, that we're different from the body, we'll just be absorbed in trying to make the body comfortable, and that's it. Eat, sleep, mate, defend, that's it. That's the difference between a human being and an animal. the animals can't do this. They can't sit together nicely, and hear something about how to improve themselves. They just bark or put a dog and a cat in the room and, okay, now you two just be here, comfortably, don't fight. Hare Krishna. So therefore, hopefully that will put this last sentence more in perspective for you, Devin. Because that effulgence is what it's talking about here. Krishna is the person, is the localized expansion inside our heart along with us, giving us direction, and the effulgence, all the energy. Altogether, that's the absolute truth. So the concept of God here in this society, in these teachings, is deeper and more and broader and more specific and more concrete. So we know who God is. I mean, that's what I used to ask when I was a kid. Well, what does he look like? Shut up, kid, we don't ask questions like this around here. Because they didn't know. And I just kept answering the question, and eventually here I am. Just keep asking the questions as a human being, and eventually that will guide you to persons who can answer your questions. Text 26. Upon becoming fixed in his attachment to the Supreme Personality of Godhead by the grace of the spiritual master and by awakening knowledge and detachment, the living entity situated within the heart of the body and covered by the 5 elements burns up his material surroundings, exactly as fire arising from wood burns the wood itself. So, purport. It is said that both the Jivatma, the individual soul, and the Paramatma live together within the heart. In the Vedic version, it is stated, Hridayam Atma, Hridayam Atma. The soul and the supersoul both live within the heart. The individual soul is liberated when it comes out of the material heart, or cleanses the heart to make it spiritualized. The example given here is very appropriate. Yonim Ivotitogni. Agni, or fire, comes out of wood, and by it the wood is completely destroyed. Similarly, when a living entity increases his attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is to be considered like fire. A blazing fire is visible by its exhibition of heat and light. Similarly, when the living entity within the heart becomes enlightened with full spiritual knowledge and detached from the material world, he burns up his material covering of the 5 elements, earth, water, fire, air, and sky, and becomes free from the 5 kinds of material attachments, namely ignorance, false egoism, attachment to the material world, envy, and absorption in material consciousness. Therefore, Panchatmakam, as mentioned in this verse, refers to either the 5 elements or the 5 coverings of material contamination. When these are all burned into ashes by the blazing fire of knowledge and detachment, one is fixed firmly in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless one takes shelter of a bona fide spiritual master and advances one's attraction for Krishna by the spiritual master's instructions, the 5 coverings of a living entity cannot be uncovered from the material heart. The living entity is centered within the heart, and to take him away from the heart is to liberate him. This is the process. One must take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master, and by his instruction, increase one's knowledge in devotional service, become detached from the material world, and thus become liberated. An advanced devotee, therefore, does not live within the material body, but within his spiritual body. Just as a dried coconut lives detached from the coconut husk, even though within the husk. The pure devotee's body is therefore called Chinmaya Sharira, spiritualized body. In other words, a devotee's body is not connected with material activities. And as such, a devotee is always liberated, Brahma Bhuyaya Kalpate, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Srila Rupa Goswami also confirms this. Ihayasya harir dasye karmana manasa gira nikila swapyabastasu jivan mukta sa uchate. Whatever his condition may be, one who is engaged fully with his body, mind, and speech in the service of the Lord is liberated even within this body. 27. When a person becomes devoid of all material desires and liberated from all material qualities, he transcends distinctions between actions executed externally and internally. At that time, the difference between the soul and the supersoul, which was existing before self-realization, is annihilated. When a dream is over, there's no longer a distinction between the dream and the dreamer. I mean, this is such good stuff. I just realized it's 7:43. We're just going on and on. It's just, normally I stop at about 6:30. 7:30, I mean. The reading part. You must have brought some energy. Hare Krishna. I'll do this purport and then we'll have some reflections and discussion. Purport. As described by Srila Rupa Goswami, Anyabhilashita shunyam. One must be devoid of all material desires. When a person becomes devoid of all material desires, then there is no longer need for speculative knowledge or fruitive activities. In that condition, it is to be understood that one is free from the material body. The example is already given above. A coconut which is dry and loosened from its outward husk. This is the stage of liberation. It is said in Srimad-Bhagavatam 2.10.6, Mukti, liberation, means Surupena Vyabhastitihi, being situated in one's own constitutional position. All material desires are present as long as one is in the bodily concept of life. I'll repeat that. All material desires are present as long as one is in the bodily concept of life. But when one realizes that he is an eternal servant of Krishna, his desires are no longer material. A devotee acts in this consciousness. In other words, when material desires in connection with the body are finished, one is actually liberated. When one is liberated from the material qualities, he does not do anything for his personal sense gratification. At that time, all activities performed by him are absolute. In the conditioned state, there are two kinds of activities. One acts on behalf of the body, and at the same time, he acts to become liberated. The devotee, when he is completely free from all material desires or all material qualities, transcends the duality of action for the body and soul. Then the bodily concept of life is completely over. Therefore, Srila Rupa Goswami says, Ihayasya hayarer dasye karmana manasa gira nikila sapyavastasu jivan mukta sa uchate. When one is completely fixed in the service of the Lord, he is a liberated person in any condition of life. He is called jiva mukta, liberated even within this body. In such a liberated condition, there is no distinction between actions for sense gratification and actions for liberation. When one is liberated from the desires of sense gratification, he has no longer to suffer the reactions of lamentation or illusion. Activities performed by the karmis and jnanis are subject to lamentation and illusion, but a self-realized, liberated person acting only for the Supreme Personality of Godhead experiences none. This is the stage of oneness, or merging into the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This means that the individual soul, while keeping his individuality, no longer has separate interests. He is fully in the service of the Lord, and he has nothing to do for his personal sense gratification. Therefore, he sees only the Supreme Personality of Godhead and not himself. His personal interest completely perishes. When a person comes out of a dream, the dream vanishes. While dreaming, a person may consider himself a king and see the royal paraphernalia, his soldiers, etc. But when the dream is over, he does not see anything beyond himself. Similarly, a liberated person understands that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, acting in accordance with the desire of the Supreme Lord. And as such, there is no distinction between himself and the Supreme Lord, although both of them retain their individuality. Nityo nityanam chaitanas chaitananam. Kathopanishad 2.2.13. This is the perfect conception of oneness in relation to the Supersoul and the Soul. Hare Krishna. What purports are they? I mean, gosh. And not finished yet either. We'll start more. We'll have more tomorrow. Okay. So we've heard a little from the four Kumaras, Sanat Kumara, about what spiritual life is, what this material world is, who God is, how they're related, and what we're supposed to do about it. So now we go to the reflective stage, and if there's anything that you heard that stuck out in your mind, or of course this is your first time here, so I'm talking to you, don't mind. And it's a lot to hear and at once and kind of formulate a question. So if you don't have any questions, don't worry. Don't feel at ease, okay?
I always have questions.
Do you see this? This is called the microphone. It means you got the floor. Here you go.
My first question would be this idea that we have fallen away from the Godhead. We wanted to do our own thing. Where was the desire to do that? Where does that desire even come from, that we would want to do something different? And then my second question is, if we were to go back to the Godhead and just always be doing whatever is the mission of the Godhead, and we're all back there, what's the point of that? What would we be doing? I guess that I don't really get the beginning, and I don't get the end.
That's about the nicest question I've heard, and I got witnesses. I'm not just saying this to flatter you, honestly, I'm serious. You went right to the essence. You know, this is the existential question, that once this is answered and understood and actually accepted, because it's not that you can just accept it, we have to be qualified to accept it. But, you know, your question is really nice. So the first question, we are existentially part of Krishna. Not that I said this before. The sun rays, the rays looks like just one thing, but it's actually made up of little independent or autonomous particles of light, and they're coming from the sun. That's the relationship. the particle of sunshine, the service is to serve the sun and to serve everybody else by giving heat and light. So, because we're part of Krishna, we have a part of Krishna's qualities. And his quality is that he is unlimited. So everything that we have is limited. We're very, very tiny. So Krishna is Swarat. Abhigya Swarat. He's fully independent. He doesn't depend on anything else for anything. If he needs something, he can just think it and it's there. We're not like that. So we have independence because we're a part of God. But our independence is infinitesimal and his independence is infinite. So because we were created with that independence, limited independence, we always have the choice to use it properly or to use it improperly. That's the nature of consciousness. So with that independence, even the possibility exists always. Otherwise, love could not exist. You can't force another person to love you. Not possible. It has to be voluntary. So Krishna, although he loves us, and he actually misses us, even though he's in our hearts and he's there with us, he won't force us because he wants us to come back to him voluntarily. And he doesn't force us to stay with him in the spiritual world either. That's also voluntary. So at the point where we decided to come to the material world and live separately from him, it's inconceivable. God's inconceivable, unlimitedly inconceivable. And we're also inconceivable, but we're tiny inconceivable. It's like, nowadays, when I grew up in the 50s, just revealing my age a little here, when I grew up in the 50s, that's a long time ago, bumpity bop. They used to sell cigarettes, and the time was there when I was young, when there was no warning on the package. Yep. And then gradually, as it became a little bit more clear what it was doing to people, the government agencies, they said, you got to put this on the package before you sell it. You got to give people a chance to choose to die or to get cancer or to become sick or to just have bad breath or whatever it is. Take, fire into your lungs and think it's cool. Smoke cool. It's like, hello? That's what it means. And they do it anyway. And especially now, after all the technology and all the, the court cases and the, and the obvious danger, people do it anyway. Because they have that independence. They can do it. And therefore there's that saying, why did he do it? Because he could do it. It's kind of like that. And as far as what was the second part? Second part was then what? What's the point of it?
Yeah, like to just say
because it's an analogy. The analogy to the sun and the sun is just an analogy. But we actually have a form. I don't know if you thought about this. But as I said before, and I was talking about in the purports, the material body is actually made of inert energy. It's inert. Matter is inert. It's not conscious. It can't act separately. Even this, actual intelligence, but it can't act without me turning it on and pushing the right buttons. It's inert. So every single cell in our body is actually, it's made of material energy. It's inert. If I tourniquet, I broke my arm last year. And, they had to do an operation because it was messed up. So they cut, it's called a block. They blocked the nerves to this part of my body. And I'm telling you, it was the weirdest experience I ever had in my life. It was just an appendage. It was not connected to my body at all. I would move like this, and the arm would go like this. They said, no, keep it, confirm, don't worry, I'm okay. So I had to keep it like this. It was a good lesson, actually. So what my eye doesn't see, and even they say, okay, you see some light, goes in the eye, goes into the brain, all these little chemical reactions and electrical this and that, but there's no picture inside there. If you open it up, you don't see a movie like you're watching. You can't see the movie in the brain. It's not like that. You see on the screen, you see the movie, but it's just light flickering. It's not, you don't get in there and try to, enjoy with the light beams on the screen, So I'm using exaggerations to make a point that it's not possible for us to see and think and smell and feel and do all the things that we can do unless the consciousness had those facilities. So what that means practically is that the soul has a form. And that form is made of senses, but not material senses, but spiritual senses. And those spiritual senses are eternal. And our identity as an individual person is eternal. Therefore, we were all of us, we were little baby bodies. We had baby bodies big. Where's that body now? Oh, it's the same body. No, it's not. No, it's not. The scientists say it's not. If you're going to accept science, you better accept this. Every single cell of the body has changed, and therefore if you put your baby body, picture of all of us in this room, little baby picture, and put them all together. Okay, pick yourself out now. You know how they have this little, when the baby first comes out, there's of course now it's a hospital, but it used to be different, but they have these little tiny beds, and they're all there. Okay, pick yourself out. You can't. I mean, maybe you could, but you couldn't tell yourself different from the other ones at that development. So when the soul becomes self-realized, and when it leaves this body, it goes to the spiritual world. And when it goes to the spiritual world, it leaves the gross body and the subtle body behind. In the purports we read tonight, Prabhupada was talking about the dream and how we're dreaming and we're thinking we're a queen or a king or a great athlete or a great musician or whatever we'd like to do, we can't do. We dream about it, right? And then we get all, jacked up, while we're in the dream. And then when the dream's over, oh, okay, that's over. And then it's gone. Right? So if you measure the time it takes to dream with the electroencephalogram, whatever it is, it's very short time. But to you it seems like it's a long time. Time's relative. So then you come in, then you wake up, and you're in the bed. Oh God, at least I didn't get my things stolen. That's a relief. But then you got to remember who you are. You got to get up. You got to do your body maintenance. You got to take breakfast. You got to go out and whatever it is that you have to do. You have to do. Then you go back into bed at night and you dream. You're flying through the air. Do all these things. Something's nice happening. Sometimes horrible things are happening. So which is real? Neither. That's the answer. Neither is actually real, but I'm real. And I'm the one who's suffering or enjoying, feeling emotions, excitement. That's me experiencing those things, but in the dream it only lasts a little time, so we're thinking that's not real. And this is lasting a longer time, so we're thinking it is real. But then what happens? Then you got to leave the body, and it's finished. But are you finished? No way. No way. Everybody's saying, oh, my father is gone, my darling is gone, my son is gone, my dog is gone, whatever it is, whoever you're attached to when they leave. But right there is lying right there. What are you lamenting about? No, he's gone. Then you haven't seen him. Her, or it, whatever. So in the spiritual world, we all have spiritual forms. And those spiritual forms are doing the same thing we're doing here. There's family, there's relationships, there's fun, there's everything that happens here, except there everything's eternal. And there's no suffering like there is here in the material world. Because there, material time doesn't exist. Material space doesn't exist. But it doesn't mean that we all become one homogeneous light without any personality. That's the illusion. And that was what my spiritual master came to this Western world to teach us. That spiritual life does not mean void. Spiritual life, you cannot enjoy alone. In a prison, the heaviest punishment is what? Solitary confinement. Yeah, you got it. And they just put you in a room and that's it. Little thing there to put some food and whatever. Little hole in the thing, ground, that's it. That's punishment. So if you think that liberation is going to mean you go to a place where you're just going to be alone, no, there's no personality. That's, no. Therefore, narakayate, in Sanskrit literatures, the thought of being merged and not being able to serve and to love and have relationship is hellish thought for a devotee. But the whole world is chasing after this will-o'-the-wisp idea that at the end we just all merge together and then, okay, if we're all one, then when I become liberated, everyone else should become liberated too. But that doesn't happen. It's a dream, it's illusion. But this illusion came from somewhere. The impersonalist philosophers, they try to say that if you see a rope coiled in a certain way in a dark room where the light's just right, you can see it as a snake. And they say when we're in the material world, We're superimposing forms onto formlessness. That's what they say. But the fact is that I won't look at the door in the right light and see a snake. There has to be a similarity of form for me to impose that idea. Not only that, but there has to be the idea of a snake in your mind. It has to already be there for you to think it. Therefore, there is form in reality. The source. What does it say in the Bible?
I don't know what spirit you're talking about.
Man is created in the image of God. That means God has a form, and the form is human-like. And in case you didn't know it, there's a female form also. That's right. That's Radharani. You go into our temple room and you see Krishna and Radharani standing together. The supreme male and the supreme female. That's where we all came from. Of course, we've been going back and forth between male and female bodies so many times now that nowadays people are confused. The subtle body. That's the body you dream in, subtle body. And that subtle body is taking us from one gross body to another. And what determines the body you get is the mentality you have at the time of death. That's it. Antabanta ime deha nityasyokta sharirina yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajanjanti kalevaram. Whatever you're thinking of at the time of death, that's where you go. Just like whatever I'm thinking of now, that's what I look like. You know, what are all these fashions? There's hip-hop, and before there was hip-hop, there was rock and roll, and before that there was this and that. And as those things, you know, straight edge and punk, and as those things happen, people all of a sudden they have purple hair, and they have things, spikes coming out, and, you know, you know, skirts go up, skirts go down, hair goes long, hair goes short. You know, fashions, you know, now the things they're wearing, some of it is outlandish things, you know, people wear. And we just wear this every day, you know, don't even look in the mirror, practically. I mean, we put on our T-lock with a mirror, but aside from that, we don't care. And then we stand out. And everybody's trying to stand out. They've got this, got that, and the other thing. They're working hard, you know. They're going to the shops and looking at all these things and trying to get an outfit that nobody else has. And they just melt together in this, you know, potpourri of whatever. You want to stand out? Yeah. Stop being your body. That's not easy to do in this material world, because all the energies go into that. If you're a woman, it's women liberation. If you're black, it's black liberation. If you're white, it's white. It's all based on the body. And until we come off of that platform and do this, no matter what color we are, no matter what gender we are, no matter what nationality we are, do this together with love for God, knowing who God is. Then we can actually have oneness. Then we can come together. And that's very difficult to do nowadays. Therefore, you don't see very many of us. That's why we came here, and that's why we want to go back.
That was one of the best answers I've heard. I missed a lot, so thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. The question was outstanding. I'd like to say welcome home, but it's not the end of it. But I can say it's the beginning of it. Beginning of something. That's the truth. It's very nice to meet you. Hare Krishna. And I hope I see you again. So we're going to stop now. Do you have any questions from the cyberspace? Okay. Rati Manjari is getting ready to go to India, so she's usually the one that's, fired up with questions. What about you, Devan? You got any other questions? Enough to think, enough to chew on, enough to digest. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you, all of you. And Srimad-Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sanat Kumara ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Hari Hari Bo. Hare Krishna. Jai Ho.